Let's cue the music and start that word chat.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to that word chat. So great to see you all. So great to have you all here. This is going to be fun. This is we've been doing a lot of shows about etymology lately, and I don't want to turn it into that etymology chat. But etymology is so cool. It's so much fun, and we're going to talk about. We've got Joshua Blackburn back. You remember Joshua was previously a guest on the show when he introduced League of the Lexicon. A quiz game all about words, which we played, which I played twice in the last few weeks with my kids and some friends, and it's a lot of fun. It does make me feel a little bit unsure of myself in terms, because when I can't get a question right, everybody expects me to know the answer. And now we have them back because there's a new version of League of the Lexicon. In a new different box, just as weighty in green, and along with that, Joshua has given us the Language Lovers Lexipedia, which is a look at, just a compilation of all sorts of interesting word facts that you'll all love, and also collaborating. So let me tell you briefly, this could take me 10 minutes of the show right here, just introducing people, but Joshua is founder of Two Brothers Games, which produced the game. He's done all sorts of other things. He's been a columnist for The Observer. He's had a communications agency called Provocateur. I'm not sure why it's spelled with a K, but
yes.
And he photographed laundromats or laundrettes in London for a book. And then for this, he collaborated. We have two people today for this new League of the Lexicon, the U.S. edition. He collaborated with Jess Zafarris, and Jess, she's been on our list to be on the show for over a year. So we finally have a good excuse to have her on. She's the author of, I think, 3 books on etymology. Her latest came out in October, I think, was Useless Etymology. Jess, you may have seen her elsewhere. I think she's been on Grammar Girl a few times. She has 130,000 followers on TikTok and Instagram, and she co-hosts the video and audio podcast Words Unraveled. More than 135,000 YouTube subscribers, which is about 130,000 more than we have. Let's see, she's an adjunct professor of writing. She speaks on writing. So that's Jess and Josh, and we can now get into actually asking them questions and talking about etymology. But welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where should we start? We're gonna talk about one thing we never ask the guests is what's your favorite word, but we're going to ask you both that at some point and ask you some of your favorite etymologies. Let's start with Joshua. You've been with us before and talked about the origin of the game, but maybe you could recap that and then talk about what went into a U.S. edition, why you deemed that necessary, then how you managed to connect with Jess.
Yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, thank you so much for having me back. It's really fun and exciting to be here. The story for League of the Lexicon actually goes back to the first COVID-19 lockdown, when I was stuck at home with my 2 boys. And I was getting incredibly boring English homework from their schools to do with them and it was driving me potty because English is language
I'm
is something
sorry, it
that
was driving you what?
potty crazy. That's
Okay.
a very that's a very English word, and maybe the reason why we decided to make the US edition.
It has or has not made the U.S. edition?
No, it definitely has
No.
not made the US edition.
All right.
um, yeah, so I was getting their English homework and it was just boring. And I
Mhm.
love English and I love language. And what I was seeing was stuff that would just suck the fun, suck the pleasure, suck the love out of language. And it really frustrated me. So instead of doing their homework with them, which it turned out I was very bad at doing, I came up with language games to arouse their curiosity and to get them to think about words and language a bit differently. And most of these games were just stupid, but one of them, League of the Lexicon, I just thought, yeah, this actually has something. And I became rather obsessed with it. And to be totally honest, a bit more obsessed with it than they were. Um, but I started working on it and I thought, you know what? I felt like there was a real gap in the board game space for a game about words and language. There is actually only a handful of games about language. It's a very poorly represented area. And I decided I was going to make like the ultimate game for language lovers. And I started off writing questions. And then I started contacting linguists and lexicographers around the world to ask them to contribute questions to the game. And it was when I was doing that that I first came in touch with Jess, who immediately understood what the game was about and was super excited about it and was really lovely. And I think I only asked you to contribute one question. And I believe that you sent me like 20 or so. I think
Too exciting.
something like that. You immediately understood it, and so that's how our paths first crossed. And just to kind of like fast forward very quickly, the game launched on Kickstarter, where it became the most successful word game in Kickstarter history, and it raised a crazy amount of money. And then it went on sale in Waterstones, which is the UK's largest book chain, and they made it their game of the month. And then we were adding more special editions to the game, and so it's just seen this incredible growth from something that was a small lockdown project into something that's really beautiful and has got word lovers really excited and that people really enjoy playing.
So
Um,
let me just drop some names here. I'm just really impressed with the list of people for the first game. So you didn't have anything to build on. You just said, "Hey, I got this idea." You wrote to all these people. You got Emily Brewster from Merriam-Webster. She's been on the show. Jeremy Butterfield, Fowler's Dictionary. Peter Gilliver from the OED. Neville Gwynn from Gwynn's Grammar. Nicole Holliday, who we're planning to have on the show sometime soon. A linguist, Lynn Murphy from University. She was on our last episode. Ben Schott from Schott's Miscellany. Corey Stamper, Lynn Truss, and Jess Zafarris, and many others. And so, I asked you this before, but I just wanted to ask you again. How did you get all these people to? I mean, the people who wrote. I think um, you have people who wrote, comments about it, blurbs for it. How did you get these amazing people in the world of linguists and
so
lexicography?
I went into Waterstones, the largest Waterstones, and I
Uh,
photographed all of the books in the English language section.
mhm,
And I took a note of everybody who had written these amazing books. And then I tracked them down online
mhm.
and I sent them an email just explaining this is what I'm trying to do. Um, and I would love it if you could just contribute one question to the game.
Hmm.
And I think that people responded because firstly, what I was asking was very small. I wasn't asking for a huge amount, just one
Yeah.
question. But I think more importantly, people were kind of quite excited about the idea of a game for language lovers like this. But I think the person who can answer that best is actually Jess,
Sure.
because she did answer my email. And so maybe ask her why she answered it.
Oh, it
Yes.
was just so exciting. Honestly, I had been looking for a game like this. I don't have as many people as someone in the chat mentioned a second ago. I can never get anyone to play word games with me. So finding a group of people to play with is the biggest challenge. But I just pick it up when I'm sitting at my desk and like read through the cards and read through the questions. And it is also something that I have wanted to do for a long time, but haven't had the gumption or impetus to start myself. So I was very excited for the opportunity to write some questions, to think through the gamification of word origins in particular, but also vocabulary fun and spelling fun. And I love the characters. I think the number one thing that got my attention initially was the artwork that came with it too, because it's
Mhm.
just a beautifully designed game. It looks lovely on the shelf. It's wonderful to
Yeah.
explore. Every edition is just immaculate, and I love the characters that Joshua created to go with it as well.
Oh,
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah. So
I mean,
those were there from the beginning.
yeah. And the new game has got new characters, but I'm even more proud of them. But I think one of the things about it as well is that in this funny little world of linguists and lexicographers and puzzlers and language lovers, um, there is a very warm kind of collegiate atmosphere. And actually, people do know each other and they like sharing ideas and they like supporting and feeding this space. And so I think that when I reached out to people, people weren't responding in a protective, competitive way. They were genuinely excited that this would be a game that they would really enjoy, and they were delighted to be associated with it.
I
When
completely agree with that. I feel that everyone who is in the online linguistics space in general and anything that touches that, I mean that in like the book space, the writing space, word origins, etc. All those people are so interested in not competing with one another, but collaborating to create new things and to bring learning to more people.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, so I see we've added Webster to the new edition. You know,
Yes.
we had Doc Johnson, Johnson's Dictionary, of course, the standard for many years until the American upstart Webster came along and did that. So, and when was this original game? A couple of years?
So it launched in 2022, and then it was doing it's been selling really, really well. And then the one market that I was slightly struggling with was America, because I live in England and America is really big and it's not my country and I don't understand how distribution works. And it was very difficult working with other people in a faraway land to get this game out there. And I was also very conscious of the fact that while people really liked the game, I'd had a few bits of feedback that it felt quite British. And
That's true. Yes.
and I felt that if we were ever going to really make the game big in America, we needed to address the American English question. We needed to make it feel like an American game. And I also needed to work with somebody who could handle the distribution out there. And so I contacted a literary agent who actually worked with Benjamin Dreyer on Dreyer's English
Mhm.
and on the game that he made. And I asked her about helping me find a publisher.
The game.
There it is.
Stat.
Helping me find a publisher for the game in America. And it was during those conversations that she said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And
Nice.
so that was where the book started to come in because, as well as trying to find a publisher for the game, I started looking for a publisher for the book as well.
Mhm.
Um,
And
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 that was an opportunity there, indeed. And that was an opportunity to completely shake up the design of the game, as well as re-editing the questions for US players.
when you say shake up the design of the game,
Um, well, you've got. Ooh, I do have it all here.
I've got it. I've
I
got
was
it
gonna
here
say
too.
I've got
But
two
they
different
do
editions
look
on
they
the
do look
shelf.
very
Yeah.
they do look very very different. You've got the UK the original edition there, which is beautiful and which I'm incredibly proud of and I love it. But then you have the new edition here, which feels much more modern and it's much more designed to stand out in bookstores. And I
Hmm.
think that's the really big difference
I
because
bet.
there it is.
Yeah, the
Um,
green.
the original edition, it was kind of created for Kickstarter, but as soon as it moved into bookstores, actually you realized that it could get lost among all of these big, bright games. And so
Hmm.
we wanted to create something that would stand out on the shelves there as well.
And I love I love that. So I'm not sure how I completely feel about this. One wonderful thing about this, the design is it comes off so easily. It's got this short little,
Yes.
and then this one is more of a standard, but it's got that nice tight seal. And then the beautiful thing you did was, as people have to pull it all the way up, you anticipated that, and then you put little quotes on the side
Yeah.
of the box, so so you don't get bored opening the box.
Well, I ran a design agency for 14 years, so
Mm,
I'm passionate
mm,
about graphic design. And when
mm,
I was first working on the game, and I'm not a big board gamer myself, and when I was first working on the game, actually I didn't want to create something that felt like just another board game. I wanted to create something that felt very different and
mm.
that people would pick up and feel excited by. And I think I was probably a bit of a nightmare to work with for vis-a-vis other graphic designers because they were just like,
Sure.
God, he's just he
Yeah,
just won't let these things go.
I understand. I've been there on your side of it.
Yeah.
Um, so the game. So somebody did mention in the chat that it's hard to find people to find word games. I have the same problem. Although, as I say, I don't necessarily win at this game. Um, and then Amy Frushar Kelly asked, "Can it be played remotely?" She played on Zoom. I suppose you could play it, and you can really. It's the questions that are the heart of the game, right?
Yeah,
You could probably come up with a
absolutely.
way to play it remotely.
Can it be played remotely? Well, I've played it with you guys remotely.
Yeah, and go
Somebody
back
needs
to that.
somebody needs to have a copy of the game.
Mhm,
But once you've got a copy of the game, absolutely you could play it remotely.
mhm,
But one of the things that I love about it, and I've now spoken to a lot of people who have played it, is that the game has got a set of rules about how you play it. It's for six people. You answer questions correctly, you earn these artifacts, you try and win. But the more I've spoken to people, the more I've realized that actually people play it however they want. And sometimes they don't even bother playing the game at all. They just read the questions. So you could be having dinner with friends and just pulling question cards out and just having fun reading the questions and trying to answer them as a group of people rather than trying to compete against one another. I spoke to somebody who said that she put question cards into her son's lunchbox.
Oh,
Oh,
that's fun.
So so he would just kind of open up his lunchbox and there'd be a little legal lexicon question card in there.
hmm,
And that's perfect for me because yes, it is a game, but there is such a crazy amount of research that has gone into thinking of the questions and researching the answers that it was always my plan to make this game really interesting and informative to play. So it is challenging, but it's also really interesting, and you're always finding out stuff that you don't know about. And so that's meant to be part of the pleasure of it. So even if you don't know somebody to play it with, it's still a lot of fun just dipping into the question card box and just having fun reading the questions and the answers.
It's
Well, and
great
that's
trivia
something,
night fodder too.
absolutely. And that's something I have to stop myself from doing because
Yeah.
it is so interesting. I mean, I suppose the book does the same kind of thing. You've got a book on, is the book all from the game questions, or have you?
No, 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 absolutely
Yeah.
not. The book was definitely catalyzed by the game.
Mhm.
One of the limitations of the game was that I was discovering all of this fascinating stuff, but everything was limited to a 50-word answer. So I'd be
Mhm.
writing something about the great vowel. There'd be a question about like the great vowel shift, and the most I could say was 50
Yeah.
words.
Right.
So I was always boxed in by that. And as I wrote, the joy of doing this was, and I'm sure that Jess has this. I'm sure that we are in exactly the same place about this. The joy of language is the rabbit holes that you find yourself coming across, where
Hmm.
you think about something, you're just like, you know what, I hadn't thought about that. But where does that? I don't know the answer to that. And so you start looking and you start researching it and you discover like this whole world of things that you did not realize. And it just makes connections that you weren't even aware of. And it's the joy of finding things out. And the game allowed me to do some of that, but the book really allowed me to dive in deep and say, you know what, I'm going to have a lot of fun researching this stuff. And I think that
Yeah.
Jess and we write different books, but I think that that spirit of the joy of finding things out, I suspect is exactly the same between us.
That's
Yeah.
certainly how I've assembled all of the meat of my favorite books that I've written is simply through chasing leads and going down rabbit holes, as you said.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah. Both the books. I mean, these books are very similar. The design is similar, right? You both have, and I know you didn't. Well, I don't. I assume you didn't design your own books. Maybe Joshua, you did. But you both have all these little artifacts from the book and sort of this fun, old style looking topography. And they're both, as you say, they're both they're rabbit holes. I mean, you get
Yeah.
into Joshua, you've got a whole page of ampersands in different fonts and the evolution of the ampersand and Jess is very topical. So I this isn't a criticism, but I don't think the title is really very honest. Useless
It's
etymology. I mean, it's some kind of cool stuff in here. Why did you name it useless etymology? And is that? Are you apologizing or what is that?
So I've run a blog called Useless Etymology for about 15 years now, and that's where the name came from. But I called this Useless Etymology, but quite clearly I do not think that is the case. Otherwise, I wouldn't write a book about it. Rather, that's a jab at the notion that learning word origins is a pointless endeavor for empty entertainment. So the book's whole objective is to break down the need for pedantry and instead generate an appreciation for the joyful chaos that is the English language, and also to point out the parts of it that you might think are chaotic but are in fact not, that they're to unlock patterns that you might not have noticed, and explain why we have silent B's in the words debt and doubt, and why the word
Yeah.
wherefore means why. And it aims to demonstrate this joy and wonder and yes, utility of etymology, which is a topic I speak about pretty regularly as well.
And that really gets to one thing I encounter as an editor. I've always I've back in the Twitter days I used to tweet word tips and the really usage tips, and I found that etymology is informative in terms of usage. Sometimes etymology, the words have moved on, and other times there's sort of nuance that we can get from the words. And I guess that's a statement, not a question. But what is that? Do you find that true? Is it? I mean, that's to me, that's what it makes etymology so useful, knowing where words come from and how they evolved into what they are today.
Absolutely. I see it as several uses for etymology. One is advancing your capacity for literacy and reading comprehension and building and retaining vocabulary and decoding new words. Like if you've never encountered the word mellifluous before, you can
Yeah.
probably parse it out compared to other words that include that honey and flowing element, for example.
Mhm.
It can also help you contextualize words in history. Knowing why and when a word came to be can tell you a great deal about who needed that word and why throughout history. My favorite example is earthling, which in Old English meant a plowman and wasn't applied to
Oh,
extraterrestrials until Robert Heinlein used it in sci-fi contexts. It also
interesting.
helps you activate global perspectives and cross-cultural awareness. And I'm not just talking about the fact that it makes it easier to learn other languages, which it absolutely does, especially across Germanic and Romance language families. But we've also adapted vocabulary from non-Indo-European language families, and those words help us understand as English speakers the ways in which we have interacted with those languages throughout history. Like, it's not a surprise to see algebra and algorithm coming from Arabic mathematics, or kayak from Inuit languages, or chocolate from the Aztecs. But there are some really cool revelations here, too, like that candy is Arabic in origin, and that tango and banjo are African language families, and that the most likely hypothesis about the word caucus is that it's from a Native American word for an elder or an advisor. So it creates these pathways to new cultures, but also new disciplines. Looking at, say, the history and origins of words pertaining to astronomy or medicine can tell you a lot about what those words mean and what their uses are in those contexts. And then I find that it also reveals stories about people and events, because once you follow that rabbit hole, you find the people who coined that term for the first time, like the psychiatrists who coined terms like ambidextrous as I'm sorry, not ambidextrous, ambivalent as originally a symptom of something like schizophrenia, strength on both sides of
Oh,
one's mind. And then it also, of course, it makes you more creative and imaginative. You can coin new words, develop fictional languages, and then ultimately, particularly today, I think it's important for people in general to understand where words come from and understand that they're always changing, and understand that language does have rules of a sort. All languages do, but those rules evolve, and being prescriptive can be a little less fun than celebrating rip-roaring collective iterative creativity. And I think it's that kind of thinking that is important when trying to stand out in a sea of AI generated robotic sameness, because a robot does not create original thinking or original writing. It gives you the lowest common denominator as the result of whatever you put into it, a generic blog post, a generic book, or whatever else people try to generate there. So it just makes you a better writer and find your own voice as a creative.
mhm. Let me
I was
ask you about.
actually
Go ahead.
I was actually writing something earlier today about gossip and scandal. It was a quiz question actually about the origin, the meaning of the word scandal water, or scandal
Scandal.
broth, or
Oh,
scandal soup.
uh-huh.
Um, and it's actually it means tea.
Ooh,
So scandal soup, scandal water is tea. And it was really interesting because obviously Gen Zers refer to spilling the tea, as in give me the gossip. And this sense of scandal water has been around for 3 centuries.
Wow.
So you have Gen Zers using this slang term for spilling the tea. Presumably, I imagine, not conscious of the fact that this image has been used in slang for centuries. I find that really interesting that
Right.
that these connections exist and we just aren't always aware of them.
Right. Right. I love and those connections tell us about so much about our history. Jess, you mentioned the Native American words, the African words, and we can tell a lot about the culture from how those influences move through. And actually, what's really interesting is I think before you had DNA testing, you had language to let people to help us understand uh, immigration and how migration and how people moved from place to place.
Absolutely. It's a great
Um,
time traveling vector too, right? Like the one of the fun ones that comes to mind is the origin of the word electric, which is from a Greek word meaning amber, because the first experiments around electricity were conducted by rubbing wool against amber and seeing it generate sparks.
oh,
Yeah.
that's terrific. You mentioned ambivalent, so I just want to get your opinion on, as an expert on ambivalent. I use ambivalent to mean I have no preference.
Right.
I think it's really coming, people use it to mean I don't care. So what should I keep using it? Is it a skunked term that people won't understand me?
Oh, I don't think so. I think plenty of people will still understand you, and I think it's worth still using it. I also think it is worth accepting that sometimes a word might adopt a secondary meaning that eventually becomes the one that most people mean.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have some examples of, not to put you on the spot, but I did want to ask you some of your, more, both of you, some of your more interesting, I said etymologies, but, your word usages, word origins, word histories, word evolutions.
Absolutely. I can go on forever about this. But
Yeah.
to your point, as far as one that's kind of similar to ambivalent that has evolved over time is the word nostalgia, which is a loan translation into Latin from Swiss German, I believe. It's basically it corresponds to the word Heimweh, meaning home woe, and originally it was a word for homesickness, particularly a an affliction that was thought to mostly impact Swiss people because they were specifically mercenaries in the 16th or in the 17th century were sent far away from home and would find themselves longing for their home ultimately. And what they were probably describing in the 16th century was a version of PTSD or other, other conditions that we would define differently today. But for 1600s era vocabulary, it's a surprisingly deep look into the psyche of these folks. And then over time, it was marketingized and poeticized into sort of the notion of something that's kind of bittersweetly reminding of your youth.
Yeah. I was just going to add as well that I write about pedantry in my book, and I think it's always a bit of a balancing act that
Hmm.
people who love language need to be aware of. That we love understanding this is actually what the word means, and this is what the history of this word is, and we love crafting language properly. But language is a slippery, gnarly, jelly-like substance that is constantly changing and constantly shifting. And yeah, it drives me crazy when I hear people using the word literally when they don't mean literally. Or making kind of like dumb grammar mistakes. You're just like, oh God, just wish you'd stop doing that. But as Jess says, there are secondary meanings that are coming in, that are seeping through the gaps in language. And if the OED doesn't already describe a softer definition to the word literally, it's only a matter of time before it does, because that is how language changes. And in my book, I've got like a whole list of words that used to mean something completely different from what we mean by them now. Words like nice or bully or
Yeah.
digital or girl or just things where the meaning has been transformed and is now lost in time. And I think there's always this tension within language around where it has come from and where it's going to, and who wants to keep it where it is now, and who wants to change it and grow it.
Mhm.
My favorite thing about literally is that people have been using it figuratively so long that Jane Austen makes a joke about it in one of her books.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then yeah, it's fun to find how long some things that we think are, kids today, uh, messing up the language are actually things that go back for a long, long time. Um, um, literally is a great example of that. Are there others? Any favorites?
Jess,
The
I'm
top off the
gonna.
top of my head. Nice is a really good one because that one's gone through like seven different stages. It
Mm,
first meant like foolish and simple, and then
mm.
it meant like proper and precise, and then it's gone through this long and ridiculous sort of slang evolution throughout history.
Meet.
I had it just occurred to me. I don't know if this is in any a dictionary, if there is a specific definition for this, but we had when I went to college, we had people on our floor in the dorm from a town in Michigan, and they had several words that were unique, and it could have just been that particular time that was their slang. But nice was one that they would use ironically.
Hmm.
When somebody would do something rotten, they'd say, "Oh, that's so nice," and they would pronounce it like that. They wouldn't just say nice; they say, "It's so nice." Um, so I don't know if that's I don't know if there's an etymological origin for that, or if that's just a local
Terry
thing.
Pratchett makes a joke about it as well in Good Omens, the nice and accurate prophecies of Agnes Nutter, if you're a fan of those works. Another good example, I think, is miniature. You would think that miniature is related to words like minimum or minus or minor,
Mm,
which denote small or less, but miniature and thus the term mini as we use it today had nothing to do with size originally at all. It had to do with color. It's not related to these words. It's from the Latin word minium, which was the name of a lead-based red paint popularly used to illuminate medieval manuscripts. And a miniature was a word for one of those manuscript illuminations, especially but not exclusively one pigmented with minium. And it shifted over time
huh.
because A, these were much smaller than like frescoes and such that were on your walls. But also because the portrait miniature became a gift that you could give someone, and that was also quite small. And then in the, I believe, late in the 19th century or so, the mini camera became associated with size, and then we got the mini skirt, and now we have mini everything.
That's yeah, fascinating.
Mm.
Um,
I was
and you
going to
mentioned,
just say that I think that for me, that like I said, this tension between policing language and letting it flourish and mess around with it. I think
Mhm,
that English contrasts very interestingly with French, where the I think it's the Académie Française is
yeah,
was set up to protect the language and to kind of like stop the intrusion of these foreign words. And actually, the existence of that body has done is the reason why French is not the world's language. And actually, everything that drives people crazy about English is also the reason why it has been so successful. Its ability to adapt and grow and hoover up new words and
hoover
adapt
up.
itself to slang and just just be a complete free for all for people, which drives people crazy, but is also the secret of its success. I think that's an interesting tension, but also an interesting way of looking at what it is that makes English such an extraordinary language.
Yeah.
I have found that people want me to be a lot more um, focused on one style guide or one way of writing or one particular means of communication. But I work for in 5 different style guides across the like 5 or 6 different publications and publishers that I work for. I have to go and yes, as an editor, it is my job to ensure that anything that I am reviewing from another writer fits the style guide, right? So that's a way in which pedantry, as you might call it, is useful and important. But I find it more entertaining to observe the way people change and bend and twist and have fun with language than I do to tell them they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One
I
of
think that.
the one of the hardest categories for me to write questions on in the game was actually the usage and abusage section
Mm.
that was all about grammar because I need black and white questions with
Yeah.
nice, clear, simple answers. And I would do my research and be like, oh, there's this rule here. I can say that. And then I'd read another style guide and it was offering completely different advice. So I wrote a lot of grammar questions that just went straight into the trash can because it was just they were not answers that people could agree upon.
Hmm, interesting. And as an editor, I face the same issue with the am I being a pedant, and I'm asked to be. I'm paid to actually make a decision on things. And I don't know, Jess, if you're as an editor, if you have this problem, but I will give very wimpy answers. I will sometimes
Right.
say I won't just say change it. I mean, if it's a style thing, that's fine. But if there sometimes it's a little bit not quite style, but it makes sense. And so I'll write a long answer, and I'll go on and on down the rabbit hole and talk about the usage and how it's changed and how some people do this. I don't know. Do you have a hard time being specific?
That is the most difficult line is determining to what extent you want to capture the writer's voice and keep it authentic to them while also making it fit the publication and the tone of the publication itself.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's. Well, I want to ask you before we get to that. Let me. You have 3 books, Jess. This
Mhm.
is the third. How do they? How do they relate? How are they different? Talk about the different
The
approaches.
first book I wrote was a kid's book. It's called Once Upon a Word. It's a word origin dictionary for kids. The second one, I that was from one publisher. I ended up connecting with another publisher, and they asked me, much like Joshua's did, have you ever thought about writing another book? And they said, I said, yeah, actually, 2. And so I had these 2 ideas. One of them was based on my blog. It's useless
Mm-hmm.
etymology, and the other one was, well, I couldn't include a lot of words in my kids' book because I found that the origins were too dark or too nefarious or too naughty or just a little too elevated. And I was like, what about a swear word and naughty word origin book? And that's how we got Words from Hell. And the publisher wanted that one first. So I wrote that
Mhm.
first and then went back
Oh,
to useless etymology. And my next one, which is coming out in October, is Into the Words, an etymologist's field guide to plants, animals, and nature.
oh,
Hmm.
very interesting. That should be a
Get you
lot of fun.
outside with your reading.
Yeah, good, good. So we have a few minutes left. If you have any questions, let us know. If there's a word, a favorite word that you've wondered about, or you think that people are just this is something I used to do in presentations, and I think it was not necessarily a good thing to do because it would annoy the audience. But sometimes I do presentations, and I'd ask people to tell me their word usage issues, their pet peeves, and then I would say, okay, interesting, but did you know? And then I go into the whole, the difference in how the pet peeve really doesn't maybe apply. So I don't know what was my point to telling you that? I forget. Um, I lost it. But I did want to do a little bit of the game. I understand there are 200 new questions, and then did
Hmm.
you delete some American or some Britishisms that um, cause people consternation?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some references that weren't making sense to US audiences. So questions about Wisden's cricket annual that was wasted on you guys.
Yeah.
Questions that mention the existence of a breakfast spread called Marmite were also absolutely
I,
wasted on you
people
guys.
people know Marmite, I think.
Yeah, but they don't appreciate it.
That's
They don't appreciate it like we do. Um, so some of it was cultural references,
mhm.
um, but also I really wanted the game. This was the US edition, so I didn't want to just repackage something that was made for a British audience. American English, American culture, American society, American the country. It's different. I mean, it sounds like a stupid, obvious thing to say, but
Mhm.
the game needed to reflect that we're talking about something different. Um, and and I wanted American players to feel like this was a game that had been written for them, so that it was about more than just changing the grammar and messing up the spelling so that the stuff was spelt incorrectly.
Mhm.
We needed to.
One of the great things about the game has always been, I've played the game and gotten the question that people say, where did that come from? And
Mm,
because it does have a British origin. Um, but the great thing about this game is it's not just about winning and the questions. There's so much learning going on. It's so interesting to play the game because these are things you don't know. And if it's something that, you get and it's British English and, that's the breaks, some questions are, honestly, last time we played, I got a question about the Oxford comma. And it was just
yeah,
laughable that it was just so easy,
yeah.
whereas some of them are really tough. And so that was the joke going around, sure, that's a little bit harder than the Oxford comma question.
Yeah. Well, it is difficult knowing how to pitch a quiz game because it is a game for people who love language and they want to be challenged. So they don't want like a game full of easy questions.
Mhm.
So you need to challenge them, but people also have different levels of knowledge.
Mhm.
So we kind of get around that by having two levels of difficulty within the game. But I think that the rule that I tried to follow was difficult questions are okay, just so long as they're interesting. If
Mhm.
it's difficult and boring, that's not a good question.
Right.
If it's difficult, but it makes people think, huh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. That's a good question. And people
So,
much prefer to be challenged like that and find out something new.
yeah. Okay, we have one question from the room, and then I really wanted to go through some of the questions in the game. Now, and we said I suggested we do a head-to-head, Jess versus Joshua, but Joshua said I've edited all the questions. It really couldn't be fair, which is good. But so we're going to ask you guys to maybe Jess could still Jess, you
He
haven't
stumped me
read.
before.
He has, okay, you haven't read all the questions. Well, maybe we'll have Joshua read some questions and then Erin, if she's willing, can jump in and I'll give it a shot and maybe we can ask people from the room too. But we have one question, right?
Yep. Amy, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Oh, I'm in my kitchen, sorry. My question was what other English-speaking region might benefit from having its own version? So, like, I was thinking something
Hmm.
very different, like, I don't know, Australia or something. I don't know.
Um, I wouldn't be able to do an entire new game for Australian English. But Australian English is fascinating because particularly in the world of slang, it has got a huge quantity of very Australian words.
Mhm.
So these were our little special editions,
Yeah.
and they contain 500 questions. And we've got a global edition and a slang edition and a junior edition. We could definitely do an Australian edition of this.
Hmm.
I wouldn't be too daunted about coming up with 500 questions about Australian English. Um, and actually, we have a slightly smaller format, which is just like just contains 10 question cards, so 50 questions. And I like the idea. I've always been really drawn to the idea of doing very, very specialist question decks. So, for instance, you could have a little micro pack about Welsh or
Oh, that'd be
Scottish
interesting. Yeah.
Mhm.
or arts and science. And you could really do a little deep dive into those. Um, and that's what I'd like to do. The Australian English would
Okay.
be a lot of fun. My biggest challenge actually is just distributing the game in Australia because it's so far away.
There's a lot of clamoring in the room for a Canadian edition also. So, uh, or a Canadian pack anyway.
Yeah,
The thing I love about Scottish is all the words that are American words that the English don't use anymore, but they survived in Scotland and then they came over to the US, and English people tend to say, oh, those Americans and they're fake words, and they're actually Scottish in origin.
yeah.
So we could do some questions on that. Okay, I think we got a few minutes left. We have 4 minutes left. Let's see if we can do some questions. Joshua, if you're ready, you could pull them at random,
Okay then.
or
Yeah, no, I can. I'm happy to. What would be the best way to do this? I mean, I've got some really lovely questions from the US edition.
yeah,
Um, I can.
I can roll a
Yes.
category, and then if you've got it set up that way,
Yeah, that would work.
all right. All right, I'm gonna roll, and it's 55555. So what is that? Wordly
That is
wisdom.
that is worldly wisdom.
Mhm.
Okay then. What is a milkshake duck? Is it A, the act of declining a milkshake? B, an implausible explanation that is nonetheless believed? C, a social media star with a compromising history? Or D, a disastrous mismatch of restaurant menu options? A,
Mm.
a milkshake duck.
I love that answer. Uh, People in the room are saying C. I've never heard this. Aaron,
I haven't, but I think the answer is B.
B.
The
Mm.
people in the room know.
Oh, great.
Okay.
It is C. It's actually it's fantastic. So a milkshake duck is a social media star with a compromising history. So milkshake duck was coined in 2016 by cartoonist Ben Ward, who posted on Twitter,
Huh.
"The whole internet loves milkshake duck, a lovely duck that
Oh,
drinks
yeah.
milkshakes.
I remember
5 seconds later, we regret to inform you the duck is a racist."
that.
It later entered the Urban Dictionary to describe someone who becomes rapidly famous before being exposed for having a deeply flawed character.
God, I remember when that happened too. I can't believe I forgot.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, let's try another one. This is great. We have three this time.
Okay. So we've got
Usage and
my
abusage.
hardest category,
Okay.
which is usage and abusage.
Mhm.
Now, this one is slightly difficult to do online because I've got to make sure um it's something that works being read out because sometimes you need to. Okay.
Yeah, some of them are spelling
Exactly. Some of them you need to read the question
or not spelling, but
yourself.
different spellings of the same word. Yeah.
Um, Now, having said I've written these questions so I know the answer, there are some I still cannot remember the answer to.
Okay.
So, which statement is incorrect? Bi-weekly means
Oh,
occurring twice a week. Bi-monthly means occurring every 2 months. Biannual means occurring every 2 years. Semi-weekly means 2 times a week.
and what was
So which
A?
which one is
Yes,
incorrect?
incorrect.
Bi-weekly means occurring twice a week.
Yeah.
Bi-monthly means occurring every 2 months. Biannual means occurring every 2 years.
Okay. All right, I've got this
Semi-weekly
one.
means 2 times a week.
I've got this one.
I think so
And
as
there are
well.
some answers in the room. Answers in the room are A, D, uh, A and D. There's a dispute. What do you think, Jess?
I think it's biannual.
I think it's A. I think it's twice a week. Because and actually,
I think Jess gets this.
Biannual
Biannual,
oh,
doesn't mean every two
biannual
years.
means occurring every 2 years. Is incorrect. Something biannual occurs
let's see
twice a
here.
year.
Twice a year.
Something that occurs every 2 years is biennial. Now
Yes.
so here's the kind of thing that would actually do my head in. And I would get so confused, I would just write occurs every 2 years, right?
And that is,
To
yeah.
avoid using the word entirely.
And because people don't necessarily um, know that answer. And I feel, yeah, I feel like I did know that. But then bi-weekly can mean every 2 weeks or twice a week.
Yes,
People use it
bi-weekly
both
means
ways.
bi-weekly means both twice a week and every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I think we
Bi-monthly,
should. Oh, sorry, please.
no, go ahead.
I think we should bring back fortnightly because that's
I
much
love
more useful.
fortnightly. Yes,
Americans don't use that one nearly enough.
Yeah.
It's much
absolutely.
clearer.
We have had the discussion on the show before that we really need to revive fortnightly. Let's all make an effort. All right, one more. One more. It's after the 5:30, but we got number 2 this time. Uh, meaning and more.
Meaning and more.
Okay.
Okay. So, I mean, one of the pleasures of doing the US edition is playing around with all of these wonderful 19th century American English creations of kind of like very kind of like complicated or funny words that people had clearly got great pleasure from coming up with. And this question is about one of those. Something or someone described as a whoopin' socker is what?
Hmm.
Unattractive, foolish, lazy, or extraordinary? A whoopin' socker. Have I pronounced that right?
I believe so.
Thank you. So
WH or WO?
WH double O. You know what? I'll just quickly.
Type in WHOOPEN
It's in the chat.
There you go.
SOCKER. Soccer.
What were the
You know what?
options again?
You know what? I just realised I can literally just copy the question in.
There you go.
There we go. That's easier.
Not entirely sure I didn't write this question.
I think you did. I think you did.
Unattractive, foolish, lazy, or extraordinary. Aaron, any ideas?
I have
I
no
only,
idea, but I like
I,
extraordinary.
yeah.
That's what I think it should mean.
A couple of D question marks, and then I like D too. I think I would go with D if I were to guess in the game.
I'm going to let Jess answer this because actually I
Yeah.
believe she did ask it.
That is correct. And
Yay.
honestly, the only reason I knew it is because I have a lovely edition of the what is it called? the Dictionary of
Welcome,
American
Stalker.
Regional English, which comes in many large editions.
Oh yeah.
And you told me that it was a term from Wisconsin.
Yes, that's right. Which it sounds
love
like a
this.
term from Wisconsin.
Yeah. For something remarkable, like a big surprise or a hilarious insult.
Hmm.
I think future show we're just going to read from the Dictionary of American Regional English. It'll be a blast. All right, well, we're out of time. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Jess and Joshua. This is fun. I mean, I could do this again. I could do this like every month. Just have you guys back and talk about this and play the game. Thanks so much. Let's see the book. Get the book. Get the game. It's a U.S. edition now. I have the original edition, and I've got the slang one, which is great. It's great to play it in mixed company because some of the questions are a little bit raunchy. And so get the game, and we've got the Language Lovers Lexipedia, which is just out from Joshua, and then I think am I right? October Useless Etymology is out there. Wonderful forays into the rabbit holes of language. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody.
Beautiful.
Thank you very
Thank you all
much.
so much.
Bye.